All right, well, yeah, Dave had me on there for discussion of grouse and woodcock management. It's kind of a broad subject, and we have so many habitat-related talks that I'm not really going to talk about that because, you know, there's a lot of fantastic things happening. So I just threw some slides together just to make it quick because I know we've got a lot to cover about population status of grouse, and put one slide or two slides in about woodcock. Bill Harvey is actually our woodcock expert, so so I got a little information from him, but it's mainly about grouse.
Just give you a finger if you want me to change that.
Okay. So, you know, like I said, I'm just going to give you some information about the various ways we monitor our ruffed grouse populations. We've got really three surveys that we can use to look at what's going on with grouse. The first is the Maryland Breeding Bird Atlas, and this is really it's sort of like a snapshot in time, although it takes 5 years to complete this effort. But it's a really intensive effort by birders to catalog all the breeding species of birds in small, you know, just a small part of the state, and they're called blocks. And you can see some of the results here. So they did it in 83 to 87, and then in 2002 to 2006, and they break it out into possible, probable, or confirmed. Basically, that just has to do with whether they saw young, if there's confirmed nesting of that species, or whether they just saw the bird or heard the calls. So in the case of grouse, it would be if they heard drumming. But you can see the difference between the first survey and then the most recent survey. 133 blocks where grouse were documented in the period between 83 and 87, dropped down to 90 blocks in 2002 to 2006. So we essentially could you know, say that the range of grouse had contracted by about 30% over that time frame. So not great news. And then here's the map showing really the current range of grouse. And like I said, I mean, there might be a few here and there that they missed, but generally this is a pretty good survey. So, you know, you grouse hunters know where they're grouse, and if there's some outside of this range, you know, that would be good to know. But maybe a few hidden places you sneak in there. But yeah, so Garrett County, obviously, pretty much the whole county, and Allegheny, and then Washington. You sort of have two disconnected patches there, which is, you know, it's kind of confirmed because Pennsylvania does their own survey, and that you can see where it goes up the mountains there into PA. So interesting there, but. You know, I would assume that, and I'd love to show that, but the website was down. I was trying to get that, you know, the previous survey map versus this survey, and this is the current survey, and I couldn't. Like I said, the server just wasn't working for the last week when I was trying to put this up. But yeah, that would be South Mountain, right? Somebody, yeah, that's. I would expect that just that gap is one of the places where we lost birds, and I think they came. Did they come into Frederick a little bit more? I think Donnie's.
That's the Hagerstown Valley, probably.
Yeah.
That's just all ag land.
Right.
That's South Mountain.
Right.
Frederick watershed was old forested, but that's Hagerstown Valley. There's no not good grouse habitat around here.
So this is generally probably the historic range, but within there's less, you know. So you can get the next one.
Bob, do you know how that 30% contraction that you compares to other mid-Atlantic states or other Atlantic states? Or
probably similar, if not, maybe some other states are even worse off than us, just from talking to other grouse biologists. Yeah, I think generally we're doing better than most states in the mid-Atlantic region. Another source of data we have is the Hunter Male Survey, and this is, I don't know if anybody ever filled one of these out, but it's a random survey of 7% of our licensed buyers. And it's what we use to estimate the number of hunters, days, and harvest for all game species in Maryland. With grouse, since we only have grouse in 3 counties, we have a fairly small number of grouse hunters that report. So we've got a small sample size, which kind of makes it go up and down. You know, you lose some precision in these surveys when you don't have a lot of people sending data in. But it's still useful for trend data, and we can kind of get an idea. So here's the number of Maryland grouse hunters, which it looks pretty bad. You are some of the select few that are still with it.
Must all be here today.
Right. Yeah, we have about half the grouse hunters right here. So we're down, around 1,000, I guess, or fewer than 1,000 in the state. At one time, we had 10,000 grouse hunters in 1975. So you got all the birds to yourself. It should be fantastic hunting. You can read a lot into this. Did grouse numbers decline, and that's why people aren't hunting? But I mean, really, this is exactly what you see with all small game species. And we could talk in depth about why that might be and whatever. But I think that everybody's just getting lazy and hunting deer now. But that's just one source of data.
How does that affect your funding?
Funding for statewide. Well, of course, we're interested in maintaining hunter numbers, high. But so we've seen a decline in the number of hunters. What is it, Bill? Bill keeps track of that. How many?
Well, in 1975, we had about 175,000 licensed hunters. That was that's like the all-time peak. And now we're down to, and actually since then, or back then there was relatively few non-resident hunters. That's actually, the non-resident hunters has actually gone up. Now, so right now we sell about 20,000 non-resident licenses, and we have just a little less than 100,000 resident hunters. So, from 1975 to now, we've lost about close to 75,000, almost all resident hunters.
So, of course, that directly affects our funding with license sales and a variety of other things. But, I mean, big thing is, when you don't have a group speaking up for that species or group of species, it really can change, management on these lands. So, that's why you are important in, making sure that you're, what you want to see out there is a priority on these properties. So this is another some more data that we can get from that hunter mail survey, just the number of days hunted per hunter. And, you can see it goes up and down a lot. But generally, most people hunt 4 hours per day for grouse. So, go to the next one. And the harvest per day per hunter. So this is kind of interesting. And I look at this periodically, and it really, if you take out these last few years, we sort of had an upwards trend on this harvest per day. So I thought things were pretty good. Now it has dropped off, and this could very well just be, like I said, a sample size issue where the guys that happened to return surveys, we had some exceptionally poor grouse hunters sending these surveys in that was bringing our. So just some general thoughts. I mean, have the last 4 years been exceptionally different than the previous 8 years for the guys that hunt grouse in here? Or does anybody want to share their?
Yeah, when you tore up Warrior Mountain for the deer geeks, that ruined all the grouse hunting.
Okay. Yeah. So.
When was that? 5-6 years ago? There was a lot of grouse up in that area.
Yeah.
On the top up in the orchard, and then he came in with bulldozers and plowed all the trees over. And we asked why, explaining it was too large a hunt.
I might let our Western region guys address that because I don't know of that issue, but okay, so.
Which one?
Yeah, but overall, this should be sort of everybody combined, and it does look like it's a little bit off. But generally, guys are killing about 1 grouse per 5 days. So grouse are a challenge. Anybody that hunts them knows that. But it's not significantly different than in the.
I think I'm pretty sure that's this starts the same year as your previous
Mm-hmm.
track. You had all those hunters in Maryland in '75,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't harvest hardly anything.
Right.
Right. What you said with the function of why people just aren't hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's right there. They still were out there.
Yeah.
They didn't harvest anything, and they continued to be out there until it really started to drop off.
Exactly.
The numbers
Yeah.
were low, obviously, here then too.
Mm-hmm. Right. You can go to the next one, Jonathan. So yeah, that was the hunter mail survey. Now the Grouse Hunter Cooperator survey is something that we just recently began, and hopefully anybody that hunts grouse is helping us out with this. We're just trying to get it going. We didn't have a large pool of folks to tap into when we got this started. Appreciate Dave. He came up with some prizes we gave away. There's like an incentive to get folks to participate with this. But it's essentially just a hunting log that you just fill out, number of days you hunted, and the county, and how many you flushed, and how many you killed. And it's something that nearly all states, I believe, do, at least in this region. So it's a way that we can compare among states. And it also gives us some better, some more confidence in the annual comparisons. We can look back and say, well, how is this different from last year? Because it's essentially the same group of cooperators each year, so it's different than the hunter mail survey in that regard. So just some highlights. Like I said, it's fairly, it's sort of in its infancy. We've got, some number of years now, but it's still not a long-term data set. But we annually collect data from about 30 to 35 cooperators. I'd love to have that higher. So if you're not helping us, please shoot me an email and let me know you'd like to participate. But really, I think it's not really a cross section of grouse hunters. It's probably the hunters that are more avid, that are more interested recording what they do, because they hunt 500 or more hours a year on these surveys. So it's a pretty good sample size in that respect. A lot of hunting on public land, which might say something about the quality of our public land grouse hunting. Usually about 80% of the hunts occur on public land. And again, a little bit more swayed towards the hunters that use dogs. So probably your more avid grouse hunters. Average of 3 to 4 hours per hunt. That's similar to our hunter mail survey data. And we're somewhere in the range between 0.75 and 0.94 flushes per hour, depending on the year. And here are those data. It's actually gone up a little bit, and in the last 6 years. So, it's kind of contrary to the hunter mail survey data, which showed a drop off in the success rates of hunters. So it's a good thing. And you can see they flush a lot of grouse for each one that you kill. The black is the kill per hour. So I'm sure everybody that grouse hunts understands why that is. So, get the next one, John. So here's the flush rates by county, and this is something I get a lot of calls. Well, where do I go to hunt grouse? And I essentially just tell them, as far west, the further west you go, generally, the higher flush rates you'll have, and the data shows that here, almost 1 flush per hour in Garrett County versus Washington County, which is less than half that. And this is fairly interesting. So this is the same survey that on here there's 7 states listed: West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and New York. And they all had their surveys going much longer than we have. We're the blue line, and this is, a lot of them aren't as quick getting the stuff summarized as I am, but you can see where we rank compared to these other states. So we are much higher than Ohio. We'll see that Kentucky, much higher than Kentucky. And then here, like New York, you're asking about, the changes in grouse numbers in other states. New York has seen a real precipitous drop in their grouse, and at least in their flush rates, which probably correlates to grouse numbers. And then West Virginia, Pennsylvania are still quite a bit higher. So we fall out somewhere in the middle. It's difficult type of hunting. We don't have a ton of birds, but we're hanging in there, and we've seen a little bit of an increase there. Something that's really interesting from this is you can see these ups and downs are generally really consistent from state to state. Here, every state went up that one year. Every state went down that year. And even going back into these other years, you can see those patterns from year to year, which really makes you believe that it's a weather-related issue. These annual changes are likely weather-related, something that's happening across the entire Mid-Atlantic region. That habitat isn't causing that, but habitat is causing this general downward slide. So interpret it that way. So just a quick summary. Grouse range appears to have contracted over the last 25 years, and of course, with less range, you're going to have a decline in the overall population. But there's still grouse. Where there's grouse, it appears that the numbers of grouse within those areas is probably fairly consistent. Because flushing rates and hunter success rates, at least in Maryland, haven't declined significantly. So where you still find grouse, where it's worth hunting them, guys are generally doing about what they were in the 70s and 80s. The annual changes appear to be weather-related. Maybe has to do with mast crops and some things like that. There's some factors there that have been shown to be correlated with grouse populations and breeding success and things like that. But it's these annual changes. But the long-term declines are surely due to habitat changes, habitat losses, as far as have matured, and we all know what's happened on that front, and that's why we've got all these folks doing habitat work. And then hunter participation has declined a lot faster than any possible grouse population declines, and that affects funds for management and various other issues. Any questions on grouse before I move on to woodcock? Over there.
When you read these reports from the lake states, they talk a lot about 10-year grouse cycles, up and down, over a 10-year period. These 2 5-year, the 83 to 87 and the 2002 to 2006. Was there any comparison of the years, or were they just looked at as a block of 5 years in terms of possible grouse cycles influencing those numbers?
Well, that survey isn't really set up to look at it that way. But some of these other data, you could look at that, and there's not really any evidence of cycles in this part of the country. It's more of just up and down annual fluctuations. Yeah, some different things going on up there that cause those 10-year cycles. Yeah, but generally grouse, and Linda, correct me if but generally in the Mid-Atlantic region, we don't think about grouse being on cycles like that.
How much of the population decline do you blame on predators?
I think that it plays a role, definitely, and but you know, like I said, where there's still habitat, you still have similar numbers of grouse that you had 30 years ago. But without a doubt, there's more of all types of predators, but avian predator populations have really skyrocketed, affecting any ground nesting bird. It's just, you know, so it's just, there's not much we can do about that other than make the habitat better and more of it.
It was Bob, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bob, forgive me, maybe I came in a little late, so maybe I missed the discussion, but a lot of our western Maryland from Frederick west grouse population seems to be tied to the disruption in the forest, harvesting, logging, gypsum moth. So, speak briefly about Maryland's plans to timber harvest our public land.
I think we're going to have some. Are you?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, I think some of these other folks will be talking about that, you know, more. I mean, I can give you my overall impression is that we are a lot better off than some other states, and that likely is why our flush rates and a lot of our data is not declining as much as those states. I know there's, particularly in places where there's a lot of national forest, Virginia, timber cutting is just, you know, almost off the table as a management tool, whereas we don't have those same restrictions. So I think we're hanging in there and doing as much as we can, but they've got some stuff going on that maybe you can ask them more directly later on. Any other questions about grouse? Yeah. I don't know anything about Warrior Mountains.
Before you die.
All right.
I read somewhere a couple of times now that where people believe where turkeys are really going haywire, that the grouse populations have declined in those areas.
Directly due to turkeys.
Competition,
Yeah.
Turkeys tearing up their ground nesting birds.
Right. You hear that from time to time, but there really isn't any evidence, you know, research evidence that shows that. Hear the same thing. I deal a lot with quail, bobwhite quail, and you hear the same thing there where turkeys are eating the quail chicks and nests. You know, I think it was documented one time where a turkey ate a quail chick, but yeah, it's hard to believe that they would really have a direct impact like that. And really, what you're probably seeing is that the habitat is changing, and as those trees mature, it becomes better turkey habitat and worse grouse and quail habitat, you know, so you see more of one and less of the other, and they're not correlated, you know. Habitat's the main driver there. So go ahead, Jonathan. Just a quick couple notes on status of woodcock in Maryland. Again, the Maryland Breeding Bird Atlas Project does a pretty good job of documenting what's going on between the 80s and the 2000s. Even a steeper drop-off with breeding woodcock. We went from 378 blocks with woodcock documented to 196 blocks. So breeding woodcock are definitely, there are definitely less breeding woodcock in the state now than there was historically. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Singing Ground Survey shows a very similar trend. In fact, we're down to where very few of those routes we even document woodcock on it. So it's not a good trend. Now with woodcock, it's different in that we've got migratory birds that come in and sort of, you know, muddy the waters, and it's harder to count these things when you've got some resident birds that are breeders and other migrants, and they sing up and down their migration. So it's a little harder to document it than it is grouse. And as far as numbers of migratory birds, it seems like we're kind of holding our own, maybe. I don't know. At least hunters seem to be doing fairly well, and we hear from quite a few of them. So that's one good thing. If you can't breed them in the state, we can get them from other states.